Hello, America. You are tuned in to Ranting Politics Headline Updates. I'm JOC, and we've got a packed show today with some absolutely wild stories from the corridors of power. Coming up, we'll dive into Netanyahu's peculiar gift to Trump, a golden pager with a fascinating backstory that you won't want to miss. We'll break down Trump's ambitious tax reform blueprint that's got House Republicans buzzing and unpack the drama surrounding Kash Patel's FBI director nomination that has Democrats hitting the panic button. Plus, we've got the latest on that controversial federal worker buyout program that just hit a legal roadblock, and Trump's bold move to sanction the International Criminal Court over their Israel investigations. Stick around. This is going to be good. In what might be the most unique diplomatic gift exchange we've seen, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just handed Trump not one, but two pagers during their meeting, and one of them was solid gold. Now, before you start thinking this is some weird throwback to the 90s, there's actually a fascinating story behind these seemingly outdated devices. Just a few months back, thousands of pagers carried by Hezbollah operatives across Lebanon suddenly turned into miniature explosives, taking out over 30 terrorists and injuring thousands more. Talk about a message you don't want to receive. And as if that wasn't enough, hundreds of walkie-talkies decided to join the party the next day, heating up and going boom in their owners' hands. Trump, being Trump, couldn't help but call it a great operation when receiving the golden pager. But that wasn't even the wildest part of their meeting. Our former president dropped an absolute bombshell by suggesting that the U.S. should literally take over the Gaza Strip. And I mean literally. We're talking full American control, complete with plans to level the whole area and transform it into some kind of economic development zone. According to Trump's vision, we'd clear out all the unexploded ordnance, flatten the destroyed buildings, and create what he calls unlimited numbers of jobs and housing. He even suggested that Gaza's residents would jump at the chance to relocate to neighboring countries like Jordan and Egypt, though, spoiler alert, those countries aren't exactly thrilled with that idea. But here's where it gets interesting. According to former Israeli intelligence official Avi Melamed, while countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan are publicly saying thanks but no thanks, they might actually be quietly intrigued by Trump's proposal behind closed doors. After all, who wouldn't want a solution to their Hamas problem? This story comes to us from fresh reporting by the New York Post, showing once again that in the world of international politics, what's said in public isn't always what's being discussed behind those golden doors. In a major policy development today, President Trump met with House Republican leadership at the White House to lay out his vision for what's being called the largest middle-class tax cut in American history. According to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, Trump's plan is ambitious and far-reaching. The president's priorities start with some significant changes for working Americans. He's pushing to completely eliminate taxes on tips, which would be a game changer for service industry workers. Seniors would see their tax burden disappear entirely, and Social Security benefits would become tax-free. Even overtime pay would no longer be subject to federal taxation. But Trump isn't stopping there. He's also looking to breathe new life into his 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which is set to start expiring later this year. For those of you in high tax states, there's potentially good news. He's proposing adjustments to those controversial SALT deduction caps that have been such a headache for many taxpayers. Here's where it gets interesting. Trump's also taking aim at some rather specific targets. Those billionaire sports team owners, say goodbye to your special tax breaks. The carried interest loophole that's been a favorite of Wall Street, that's on the chopping block too. And in a move that's pure Trump, he wants to create new tax cuts specifically for products made in America. The plan's already gaining traction with House GOP leaders, including Speaker Mike Johnson and Majority Leader Steve Scalise, who were present for this detailed discussion. With Republicans holding a 53-vote majority in the Senate, they're positioning to push these reforms through using budget reconciliation, potentially bypassing the need for Democratic support. Fox News was first to report these developments, which could reshape the American tax landscape if implemented. The drama on Capitol Hill reached new heights today as Senate Democrats managed to throw a wrench in the works of Kash Patel's FBI director confirmation. The scheduled committee vote was pushed back until next week, with Democrats demanding a second hearing from Trump's controversial pick to lead the Bureau. After sitting through a marathon 5-hour confirmation hearing last week and submitting thousands of pages of documents, Patel is facing fierce resistance from Democratic lawmakers who claim he failed to adequately address their concerns about maintaining the FBI's independence from political influence. Senator Chris Coons didn't mince words, declaring that Patel has no business being the director of the FBI. Coons pointed to a particularly troubling exchange where he asked Patel who the FBI works for. Instead of emphasizing the Bureau's independence, Patel reportedly answered that the FBI works for the White House, a response that set off alarm bells for many on the committee. Senator Amy Klobuchar, drawing on her prosecutor background, expressed shock that Patel had repeatedly called the very people he would be managing corrupt. She noted that the nonpartisan, independent nature of the Justice Department and FBI is fundamental to public trust in our justice system. While Democrats can only delay the committee vote through next week, they're hoping to use this time to drum up public awareness and potentially sway some Republican votes. As Senator Alex Padilla put it, this is now a test for Senate Republicans. Will they choose the rule of law and Constitution or loyalty to what he called a reckless president? According to Fox News reporting, this confirmation battle appears far from over, with Democrats signaling they'll use every tool at their disposal to scrutinize Patel's fitness for this crucial role. A federal judge has thrown a temporary roadblock in front of the Trump administration's ambitious plan to reshape the federal workforce. Judge George O'Toole Jr. put the brakes on the controversial Fork in the Road federal employee buyout program, blocking its implementation until at least Monday afternoon. This 11th-hour intervention came as more than 2 million federal employees were facing a midnight deadline to accept what the administration calls a deferred resignation offer. The program, spearheaded by Department of Government Efficiency head Elon Musk, has already seen about 40,000 federal workers, roughly 2% of the civilian workforce, accept the deal to leave their positions. 4 major federal unions representing 800,000 civil servants brought the legal challenge, arguing the buyout is not just unlawful, but potentially dangerous for government operations. They're particularly concerned about the loss of expertise in complex federal programs and the risk of positions becoming politicized. The Justice Department fired back, warning that any delay would have remarkably disruptive and inequitable repercussions and hinder the administration's reform efforts. They emphasized that scores of federal employees have already accepted the offer, which would continue to pay them through September 2025 if they resign by the deadline. The unions raised serious concerns about the program's legality, questioning how the government could promise payments through September when current appropriations expire in March. They've also taken issue with the program's similarity to Musk's controversial Twitter workforce reduction strategy, suggesting the government rushed to implement a private sector approach without proper consideration of its implications for public service. With the judge scheduling a fuller hearing for Monday afternoon, this battle over the future of the federal workforce remains far from settled. According to ABC News, the outcome could have far-reaching implications for government operations and national security. In a bold move sending shockwaves through international legal circles, President Trump has signed an executive order imposing sanctions on the International Criminal Court, specifically targeting their investigations of Israel. This comes right on the heels of Netanyahu's visit to Washington and amid escalating tensions over the ICC's arrest warrants for Israeli leadership. The order pulls no punches, accusing the ICC of engaging in what Trump calls illegitimate and baseless actions against both America and Israel. It's particularly focused on the court's recent arrest warrants for Prime Minister Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant over their military response in Gaza following the October 2023 Hamas attacks. These sanctions pack a serious punch. We're talking about blocking property and assets of ICC officials and even preventing them and their family members from entering the United States. The administration's stance is crystal clear. Neither the U.S. nor Israel recognizes the court's jurisdiction, and they're treating these warrants as a dangerous precedent. Human rights activists are already sounding the alarm, warning these sanctions could have a chilling effect on international justice. The ACLU's National Security Project calls it an attack on both accountability and free speech, while Human Rights Watch describes it as going beyond the pale. What's particularly interesting is the U.S.'s complicated dance with the ICC over the years. We've seen everything from outright opposition under Bush to tentative cooperation under Biden, especially when the court was going after Putin for war crimes in Ukraine. But now, with Senator Lindsey Graham leading the charge, we're seeing a complete 180-degree turn, with promises to not just fight the court, but also target any country that tries to enforce these warrants. This story was sourced from AP News, giving us the latest on this developing international showdown. And that wraps up today's whirlwind tour through the political landscape, folks. We've covered everything from Netanyahu's symbolic golden pager gift to Trump's ambitious tax reform plans, the heated FBI director nomination battle, that dramatic federal employee buyout freeze, and the administration's bold stance against the ICC. What a day in politics, and these stories just keep getting more interesting by the minute. If you want to stay ahead of these fast-moving developments, make sure to follow us on X at RantingRP. And for deeper dives into these stories and exclusive content, head over to rantingpolitics.com. This is JOC, signing off, and thank you, our loyal listeners, for choosing Ranting Politics headline updates. We'll be back soon with the updates you need to navigate these interesting times. Until then, stay tuned, stay informed, and as always, stay free.